We're talking Bad Batch, episode 13, Infested, right now. Come on inside.
What's up, everybody? We are the Jersey Comic Crew. Today, we're talking Bad Batch, episode 13, Infested. Now, this is your spoiler warning. We're going to talk about the events of the episode and what we liked about it, what we didn't, and what it means for the future of the series. And now, guys, before you continue, make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe, do all that kind of stuff that we need you to do to keep moving forward. Now, Chris, today, with only a couple episodes left, this episode, to me, and I believe we're on the same page, very underwhelming, right? It felt very strongly like a filler episode. Halfway through the episode where they're talking about like there's this new guy in town and they have to deal with the spices and stuff, I was like, oh, maybe that's a new status quo for Cid, right? Mm-hmm. We have this new guy coming in who's like, he took everything over, he has his own guards, and then Cid's like, we're gonna just steal spice from him and kind of get back at him. But I was like, maybe the point of this episode was to set a new status quo for this area, realizing that the Bad Batch can't keep coming back here to Cid. They have to move on, right? But by the end of the episode, Cid gets her place back. The guy loses his horn and stuff, and everything's back to status quo. I'm like, why were we here then? Just to introduce, I guess, the Pyke, which these are like, and the Pyke are these alien race people that remind me of ancient Egypt. I have no idea why. I just felt like, oh, they were ancient Egyptian monsters. This is what they would look like. I don't really know what the point of this episode was, aside from introducing the Pyke and just wasting time when we only have a couple episodes left in the season. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Rob. I thought this was definitely the worst episode of the season. And guys, we're not going to sugarcoat it for you, right? Like, we're not going to sit here and give you 45 Easter eggs for an episode that had maybe 2. Like we're not going to clickbait you. We're just going to tell you like it is, like we always do. This was not a good episode. I don't understand, besides the fact of maybe this is just the calm before the storm of the last 3, where we're going to obviously see Crosshair come in. Maybe. But, it wasn't really a mission we needed to see. It doesn't really move anything forward. It doesn't really have an impact on the characters, besides kind of the tropes we've already seen, right? Like Wrecker's afraid of heights, and like we have this bug thing, and Cid is very sneaky and knows a bunch of stuff. The only real Easter egg we saw was, kind of in the beginning where they're coming back from some other mission and they're about to go to Cid's, and Echo mentions that, they fought off Gundarks, which is a reference to episode 2, where Anakin and Obi-Wan are in the elevator going to see Padme for the first time in 10 years, and Anakin's nervous.
Not at all. I haven't felt you this tense since we fell into that nest of Gundarks.
Obi-Wan has that like Gundark joke. I haven't seen you this nervous since I saved you from those Gundarks. So, I mean, besides that, Rob, to me, the only thing that I could pull from this is the Pykes themselves. You're right, which are characters we've seen in Clone Wars. Oh, they're this crime syndicate kind of third party. And the only thing that I kind of thought of actually is bigger in the overall picture for this show. Mm-hmm. So hear me out. So this is kind of the biggest part of this episode for me, which was a very bad, lackluster episode. So as we know, we're in a period of time where we're getting towards the Empire, right? We're getting towards the classic trilogy where the Empire rules and the rebellion will be there eventually. The Pykes were someone that was more kind of involved in this universe, as in the Star Wars universe, back in the original trilogy. The original trilogy is in episodes 1 through 3. Yeah. They're a crime syndicate. They're kind of like the overlord drug dealers of the Star Wars universe, where they're like trading in illegal spices, where they use planets like Naboo and the famous Kessel to kind of mine the spice. And they also used Wookiees as like these slave miners, where they were killing them, and kind of, we saw a little bit of that in Solo. So obviously the question is, how does this all connect to the bigger picture, right? Mm-hmm. Back in the time of, between episode 2 to, I'd say, where we are now, Darth Maul was a big player in the universe as a third party. We had the Republic, we had the Separatists, and we had kind of Darth Maul was in between that, kind of with his own plans, and he created something called the Shadow Collective. Now, the Shadow Collective was this original plan he had where he took kind of crime bosses from different aspects. He took the Pykes, he took Mandalorians, and kind of created this team that had their own agenda that had, kind of went against the Republic and the Separatists, because he knew Palpatine was Sidious. As we get further in the timeline, the Shadow Collective becomes Crimson Dawn. And Crimson Dawn becomes a massive player in the universe.
Yeah, but does that overlap with this?
It does. Glad you asked.
Okay.
Because Crimson Dawn is timeline based throughout this, and in the comics we now know it comes back during the original trilogy. Kira's still alive, who's played by Emilia Clarke. They're doing a story arc now called War of the Bounty Hunters in the comic books, where Han Solo and Carbonite was stolen from Boba Fett, and people are on this bidding war at this like crime syndicate trying to bet on him, and Kira is the one who stole him, and obviously she knows who he is. So Crimson Dawn kind of comes back, and there's another part of the comic that I wanted to talk to you about too, Rob, because there's also the High Republic going on, which is 300 years back, right?
Okay.
Now, if you open a High Republic book, they've updated the timeline to add the Bad Batch in a specific spot. And the Bad Batch is in the area right above the Han Solo movie, which is when Crimson Dawn is first revealed to be this massive player in the universe. Darth Maul is behind it. So now that we know where the Bad Batch kind of sit in this universe, I think it's hard to not look at the big picture. I don't necessarily think it's going to be about Vader and the Empire being the overhead. I think they're building, right? I think that Empire is still building. It's in the early days. We don't even have stormtroopers yet. I think Crimson Dawn is going to be the main player in this, possibly Drayden Voss, possibly Kira, possibly Darth Maul. I think they're going to run into Crimson Dawn, and that could be something Cid knows about in the background.
So I need to make sense of all this. All okay. So in the Clone Wars, we if you watched, you know this. If you just get the cliff notes like me, you're gonna follow along. Darth Maul lives, right? He falls. He creates his crime syndicate, which becomes Crimson Dawn.
Yep.
It becomes Crimson Dawn not during the Solo movie, but during Clone Wars. Is that right?
It becomes Crimson Dawn between Episode 3 and I'd say the Solo movie.
Okay, so it's somewhere between there. And the Bad Batch, we know, is somewhere in that timeline, right?
It is right before now.
It is right
officially
before
Solo's movie. So they are back to back.
Bad Batch, and then after the Bad Batch show is Solo. Okay. So right now, so you're saying, and your belief is that the Bad Batch are going to be tussling with the Crimson Dawn, maybe not with Darth Maul and all of that stuff. We know we get the ending of the Crimson Dawn storyline in Rebels, right? But
no, we get the ending of we have the Crimson Dawn story in Solo in the live action movie.
Yes.
And in the comics, they are back and Kira is still there and running Crimson Dawn.
And the Crimson Dawn in the comics that we know of, timeline-wise, where is that exactly?
This is after Empire Strikes Back.
So even later than so they get a resurgence after Empire Strikes Back, which means we can see them possibly in the future. Okay.
So again, they basically pop up as a third player again, right?
Okay.
Empire, instead of this time, it's Empire, Rebellion, and now Crimson Dawn is this third player with its own agenda. I think we're seeing, or possibly going to see, with the fact that the Pykes are somehow still around and still seem to be a major crime organization, as what we saw in this really bad episode. This, to me, seems like we could be putting the Bad Batch against the origins of Crimson Dawn. The beginning with Drayden Voss, with Drayden Voss could be their version of this could be their version of Tarkin, as in the old, kind of stuff. Or it could be their Thrawn that they go against. Kind of like how the Rebels, like Thrawn became the Rebels' big bad. Yeah. Drayden Voss in the beginning of Crimson Dawn with maybe Darth Maul in the background, because, bringing a Sith Lord with extremely good powers is going to kill everyone in minutes. But bringing in like a guy like Drayden Voss could be the Thrawn in their side. No pun intended. That is kind of fueling the Bad Batch into a new era or a new phase of their show.
For the record, I want to say this episode, we are both saying it's bad, very cavalier. The writing and the acting and the show is enjoyable, it's good. The reason why we're both saying it's bad is because it doesn't move the plot that's going on forward, especially during the time where it's towards the end of the season. I personally think this episode would have been great in the middle as a filler episode that so happens to set the seeds for what we're talking about right now. But moving back to what we're talking about right now, I do like the fact that like the Bad Batch could be going against a crime syndicate, finding their way through the city, because it's kind of like what Cid's doing. They're doing odd jobs to make money, with the Empire looming and constantly being a thorn in their side. And then you have the crime syndicate. It makes for a good play when there's multiple enemies, right?
Yeah.
And there's only so long that you could have bounty hunters chasing Omega with that whole stuff, and you don't want this whole show to be like, bounty hunters are chasing them. You never know when they're going to show up. It's like, all right, forget about that. That could just be an extension of the Empire's arc. Like, and it still is, because the Kaminoans are sending the bounty hunters after the Bad Batch and everything else, and they're extension of the Empire because they're working for the Empire. Having this new third party, instead of just being Cid doing these odd missions, are like, they're working with Cid to fight the crime syndicate, try to stay alive and try to create peace. It's good because, like, you're fighting multiple layers of tyranny. Like, on the top, right, because a new world order's coming down, and because of that, power vacuums are creating everywhere, which the crime syndicate is taking up and moving. The Bad Batchers are kind of these heroes trying to battle on both sides. I think that makes for a good show. Now, do I want this episode now when I'm like, all right, I just want to see what happens with Crosshair and everything else? Not necessarily, but like, I'm interested for that future that you have laid out for us.
And I think, you know, there's obviously a reason they put that episode here. It has to be a hint towards something looming bigger in the background. And here's my thinking with it, where, you know, obviously next we're probably going to get the resolution or finale with Crosshair and part of this Empire run, and maybe finding a little more about Kamino. Might see Cad Bane again, Fennec Shand, that'd be great. But now that the Pykes know that Cid is very resourceful, right? They got the spice back in this kind of boring mission, this kind of nothing mission, where they're, you know, doing like the crank on the, you know, it's like Temple of Doom basically with the train cars. But now we have this instance where I think there could totally be an end scene, not necessarily an after credit scene at the end, but whatever gets done, Cid has nothing to do with that, right? She's sitting in her office.
Yeah.
Do the Pykes walk in to Sid's office and say, we really liked what you were able to do for us. We have someone who thinks you could be of use.
Oh,
and
maybe.
In comes Drayden Voss, or in comes Darth Maul, and they're like, we'd like you to join Crimson Dawn. So now, for the next season, you have this conflict of now Cid could be a part of Crimson Dawn because she's clearly after money and power. I think, and the Bad Batch have to make a decision about her now.
I don't know if it's I don't see that her joining them. I think joining is such a strong like sense of like, you're with us, hoorah, right? I think it's like
they might not give her a choice.
I think it's like now you're working for us. I think that is a better play. Still creates the same thing, just a little tweak on that writing angle, if you will. Little writer's note for you. It's like, oh, now you work for us, and now she's like, I'm in a pickle. How do we get out of this? They want to save Cid. Omega's like, oh my God, she's our friend. We have to help her. And they're like,
I love that. I love that Omega's so morally
Omega,
right.
we're gonna help her. Dude, let's do this. Tech. Don't worry. We're not gonna hit this head. That's gonna be the show. I think that's fine.
Wrecker's Boo from Mario.
It could be. But guys, we want to hear your thoughts on this episode of the Bad Batch. Probably more importantly, we want to hear your thoughts on this crazy theory that Chris just laid out for us, which I hope is the future of the Bad Batch. Thank you so much for watching.
And guys, thanks so much. Give us a thumbs up, like, really helps the channel out a lot if you like the video. If you're brand new, subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss any more of our Bad Batch coverage, whether it's good or bad. We'll always have some crazy theories for you. And as always, check us on our Instagram and Twitter at Jersey Comic Crew. And as always, I'm Chris Heller. That's Rob Moran. We're the Jersey Comic Crew. And we will see you next time.